Happy hump day, everybody. It's the middle of the week. We're a few days away from trade deadline day, and the Tampa Bay Lightning and Seattle Kraken decided to shake things up here midweek. This is our coverage of the NHL trade deadline here on the latest on TFP, presented by CCM Hockey. Dennis Bernstein, David Pagnotta, DB, Yanni Gourde, Oliver Bjorkstrand end up in Tampa. The Detroit Red Wings get in the mix. They get a fourth round pick in order to retain a quarter of Gourde's contract. How do you see this one kind of playing out? A bit of a shrewd move yet again by Tampa, who give up future assets for immediate gains.
Well, for Seattle, the early bird gets two firsts. So good haul for them.
Yes.
All right. So everybody else is playing checkers, and I think Breezeball is playing 3D chess. And if you think he overpaid, you thought he overpaid for Brandon Hagel. And how did that work out? He's got a 30-goal scorer now. Don't doubt Tampa Bay. Don't doubt the GM. Don't doubt the coach. Don't doubt anything on this team. So, Dave, they could easily win the division. They could get out of the East. They could win the Cup. It's a move that I think at this point, Dave, we expect from Tampa Bay at the trade deadline. Like, what are they going to do? How are they going to be savvy? And if I was a GM, I'd be following the path that Breezeball does. Futures out the door, out the door. You could always get another draft pick. You could always trade for another draft pick. There's always a pipeline of first-round picks. So that I love the aggressiveness. And if they wind up going deep or actually winning the third cup in this recent history, you'd probably look back on that trade and say, okay, that really helped them get over the top, like they did when they originally got Gourde and Goudreau and Coleman on that third line.
Yeah, I mean, this team definitely, as you said, not afraid to give up those future assets. They value current NHL talent in compared to future 25th overall pick, 27th overall pick. They'll worry about that a little bit later. Vegas has done the same. They've been very aggressive over past years. We'll see what they end up doing ahead of the deadline. Detroit gets an extra pick out of this for eating up a little bit of money because they had the cap space to do it. And the other key thing, Tampa had extra cap space in order to accommodate Bjorkstrand's contract and a quarter of Yanni Gourde's $5.1 million hit. So shrewd move certainly by them. New Jersey, we just found out right before we were coming on that Jack Hughes is done for the season. He had shoulder surgery. He will not be ready to go until training camp of this fall. So how are they going to maneuver this one? They say they're still in buyer's mode, but is Braden Shen, for example, going to help this team over the hump without Jack Hughes?
He would have to, right? And I think the problem is if they become sellers, when you look at their unrestricted free agents, they're all death players. Like maybe you could move, Eric Holla, who's got $3.1 million cap hit this season and next. They're in a tough spot. Yeah, you want your team to be aggressive, but you're right. Braden Shen would help, but to what degree? Is he going to put you over Toronto or Florida or Washington? Not at this point. This is a massive loss, and I think that it's really dangerous if Fitzgerald's going to go on and make a big move here, not having his number one or, if you want to argue, number two center. It's going to be very, very difficult for this team to win. So I'd be really cautious if I'm Fitz here. It's an unfortunate injury, but you don't want to try to overcompensate for a guy that is very difficult, if not impossible, to replace.
Yeah, maybe you look at Shen as a get molded now with the group now. Let's make a bit of a push come playoff time, but let you get situated so we can go on a full healthy run next season. They got to balance that out and figure that out. A team like the Montreal Canadiens, they got Jake Evans signed. They've got some pieces in Dvorak and Armia, Savard, Pizzetta that are on expiring deals. They can move those guys out and retain some assets, but we know Kent Hughes is looking for an immediate piece now that also helps long-term. He's looking for those hockey-type deals that he's made in the past and taking advantage of them, bringing in guys like Doc, who's done for the season, by the way, Newhook, and, of course, Patrick Laine. Is there a pathway now for them to do something like this ahead of the deadline, or do they set up those conversations and try to knock them out of the park in the summer?
Yeah, the player they want, Dave, I don't think they can get by Friday. Yeah. Right? I think it's off-season. And, again, you can have patience. This team is still in the mix for a playoff spot, and so regardless of what happens in the last 6 weeks of the season, Dave, this is a successful season. They got back on track. They're within striking distance. If they add that player they really want, they could be a wildcard team next season. I really think they could. They've made that many strides. It's been surprising to me. But I don't think you get that player that you really need to put you over until the offseason, and then you have an option of talking to 10 or 12 teams that might have that asset that you're looking for just don't think there's enough time or opportunity here to get it done by Friday for Kent Hughes.
What about the Toronto Maple Leafs? We know that they're looking at center. We talked about Braden Shen with Jersey. He's somebody that they've been targeting. They've looked at They explored Gourde, who ends up in Tampa. We know they're in on and have been in on Scott Lawton. They've been exploring alternative options, Brock Nelson, etc. With what Tampa did today and what we expect Florida to continue to add beyond Vanacek, add somebody else up front, does this put Toronto in a tough position, a pressure cooker position to add?
I think if a GM has the attitude of somebody else made a move, so I have to make a move, that's a losing attitude. You worry about your team. And are you going to set up your team to win and make a deep postseason run? Or you can't worry about what Tampa does or what Florida did with Seth Jones. You can't have a reactive trade for that because you wind up making a bad trade, Dave. It's as simple as that. I don't think there's a lot of movability here because the guys at the top. It's a top-heavy team. It's hard to trade for another piece that might help you. Look, another piece might help them, but it's not going to put them over. There's not a trade here that, okay, this is the defining play that helps the Leafs win 3 rounds or to get to a Stanley Cup final. I don't see that player, so I don't really see a big move, maybe a depth one, but how much is that going to move the needle for a team that really needs their big players to play in big spots once we get to the postseason?
Going back to your backyard, the LA Kings, they've been looking for offense. They've been looking for a right shot scorer. You were the first one to report that back in the end of January. You also linked them to Kyle Palmieri as a potential. We know the Islanders started this week talking to teams. Is Palmieri the right fit for the Kings, or do you see them going in a different direction? What do you see LA end up doing?
Yeah, I keep looking for offense. I actually looked behind my couch for some offense. I couldn't find any there. There's none under my desk, so I guess you got to go to players. Yeah, Kyle Palmieri scored a power play goal. It was a pretty feat, and I want to say one thing. That was a really emotional interview by Brock Nelson last night on the island. I really feel for him because he's been a lifetime Islander. Yeah, they could use Kyle Palmieri. But I'll tell you, Dave, I know I've talked about right-hand shot. They just need a scoring forward up top. They do. Because you got to get Kopitar going again. Kempe's getting a little bit of a rut. I don't think Alex Turcotte's the answer up there. So they're actually a winger short. Would it help to get a right-handed presence like a Palmieri, like a bigger picture, a bigger player would be Brock Besser to help that power play and help them 5-on-5? Absolutely. Like they need to go do it. Like if you're a Kings fan and nothing happens by Friday at noon Pacific, you got to really be disappointed. This team is struggling to score. They're struggling to win right now. So I think that's the move. And if he doesn't make a substantial move, Rob Blake, it's been 8 years, Dave. He hasn't won a playoff round. Yeah. And you have an acute need with respect to offense, especially on the right-hand shot side. You got to go do it. You got to go swallow hard and pay the price. And if you got to overpay, Dave, I talked about not overpaying. This is the team that needs to overpay. Like if they're going to face Edmonton again in the playoffs, which it looks like it is, they got to add to the offense because you watch Edmonton play, they're beatable right now. So I think Rob Blake's got to be aggressive here and get a legitimate right-handed shot or just a right-handed scorer, a guy who can get 25 to 30 in a season and then take your chances in the postseason.
We still have plenty of runway left before the trade deadline Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern. There's going to be more activity here throughout the National Hockey League. Maybe we see a little bit later tonight as teams continue to have conversations and try to improve their clubs. Dennis, I'm Dave. We will catch you a little bit later on as more moves trickle in.